You won't believe what took place at the funeral for Sheinelle Jones's husband. It wasn't just emotional, it was something that made time freeze. The room was packed, people all around. But when Sheinelle stepped forward to speak, everything fell into silence. No cameras, no stage lights, just her voice. It wasn't loud, yet it carried undeniable strength. It wasn't some performance, it was genuine. And it struck every single person right in the heart. Everyone came expecting sorrow naturally. It was a funeral. But what no one saw coming was the story hidden in her words, the love, the hardship, the quiet ache, and the strength it took for her to stand and speak. That was beyond anyone's expectations. People thought they knew her. They saw her every morning on TV smiling, laughing, radiant with energy. But no one truly understood what was happening behind the scenes. Let me walk you through how it all began. One morning, viewers flipped on their TVs like usual, but something was off. Sheinelle's chair sat empty. No farewell, no announcement, no clue. Just gone. Loyal viewers noticed immediately, "Where is she?" They asked. "Is she okay?" But there was nothing, just silence. The show continued with guest hosts. The smiles stayed on screen, but to many, it didn't feel right. The seats seemed colder. Something essential felt missing. And then social media lit up. Fans began speculating.
Some figured she was on a break. Others guessed maybe she'd taken on a new role or stepped away from TV altogether. But no one really knew the truth. And the truth was darker. A few days later, she shared a post on Instagram. No photo, no fancy filters, no dramatic flair. Just one simple line. "I'm taking time to deal with a family health matter." That was all. Brief. Direct. But behind those few words was a storm, a heartbreaking truth that Sheinelle had been keeping quiet. What the world didn't know was that her husband, Uche, was battling a deadly illness, glioblastoma, a vicious, fast-moving form of brain cancer. It didn't creep in slowly. It struck like a thief in the night. Uche, or Ouch, as his close friends affectionately called him, was a strong, kind, gentle soul. He was the loudest cheerleader at his kids' soccer games, the one who danced in the kitchen just to make his family laugh, the man who always stood behind Sheinelle with quiet, unwavering love. And now, he was dying. And here's the part that truly stuns. Throughout it all, Sheinelle kept showing up. She kept coming to work, kept smiling on national television, kept laughing in front of millions, and no one had a clue. She didn't want to post about it. She wasn't looking for attention. All she wanted was peace, for him, for their kids. Every single day, she wore two faces, one for the world, one for the truth she was living. She'd drop her children off at school, sit for makeup, put on her brightest smile, and head to set. In between segments, she'd be on the phone with doctors. At night, she'd sit by her husband's hospital bed. Her heart was breaking, but you'd never know it by looking at her face. And here's where it gets compelling. Because while the world believed she was doing just fine, she was actually watching her life fall apart quietly, piece by piece. Fate had taken a sharp, cruel turn, and Sheinelle, she didn't scream, she didn't cry for the internet to see. She simply kept going. Not because it was simple, but because she had to. For her kids, for her husband, for herself. That short Instagram sentence she shared held a truth far heavier than anyone realized. Behind closed doors, Sheinelle was living a double life. One the world knew, bright lights of a morning show, interviews with stars, cheerful banter, and the other hidden hospital corridors, medical files, and moments that chipped away at her soul. Her husband's diagnosis had changed everything. This wasn't just a health issue, it was a ticking clock. Glioblastoma doesn't wait, it moves swiftly. Days started to blur. The good moments became rare treasures. But Sheinelle never asked for pity. What she wanted was to guard her husband's dignity. She wanted to preserve a calm, loving space in their home. Even when she was falling apart inside, she kept showing up. Smiling. Strong. She never shared the sleepless nights, watching over him. She never posted about explaining to her children why Daddy was always tired, or how, every time she walked out the door to go to work, she silently feared it might be the last time she'd see him alive. And when she returned home, that pain, no one saw it, because she chose silence. But let me tell you something, that silence, it spoke louder than any headline ever could. Her friends, her co-hosts of the Today Show, they started noticing. Sheinelle was still there, still performing, still delivering. But her sparkle had changed. It wasn't gone, just dimmed. Softer. Even the audience felt it. Viewers who tuned in every morning began to pick up on something. Some called it intuition, others called it love. But deep down, people sensed a shift. And then came the day that changed everything, with no warning. The Today Show opened with a softer energy. Something felt different. The mood was quiet. And then Savannah Guthrie looked directly into the camera and said something that made millions stop in their tracks. With deep sorrow, we share this morning that Uche, beloved husband of our dear friend and co-host Sheinelle Jones, has passed away. The words felt weighty. Hoda Khattab fought back tears. Craig Melvin looked down, silent. In that moment, they weren't just television hosts. They were a grieving family. And they were doing it live, in front of the entire nation. For those watching from their homes, it felt surreal. Even people who had never met Sheinelle personally felt their throats close up. Old clips began to resurface. Sheinelle and Uche laughing, dancing, holding their children. Photos that once looked like sweet, happy snapshots now carried a different weight. Smiles that once shone brightly now looked heavy. Because now, the world knew the pain behind them. What's most remarkable is that even in her silence, Sheinelle had moved millions. Online, people wrote about how that day, they hugged their loved ones tighter. Some said they called their partners just to say, "I love you." Her story, without even being fully told, was changing hearts. Because what made this story stand out wasn't just the loss, it was how she carried life both before and after it. And yet, the most powerful moment was still ahead: the funeral. That's when Sheinelle stood before everyone, family, friends, co-workers, and spoke. No paper in hand, no rehearsed lines, no script, just pure, raw love. Her voice didn't shake, and it didn't rise, but every word landed with the force of thunder. She didn't dwell on the sickness.
She spoke of the life, of how Uche turned road trips into adventures, how he danced in the kitchen like no one was watching, how he loved his children more than anything in this world. It wasn't a farewell, it was a love letter. A final, beautiful gift from a wife to the man she had built a life with. Around her, people wept softly. Even those who thought they had braced themselves found they weren't ready, because this wasn't just grief, it was something deeper. And that's when the internet lit up. Clips from her eulogy began circulating at lightning speed. Viewers called it one of the most powerful public moments they had ever seen, not because it was polished, but because it was true. What set this story apart? It was how Sheinelle balanced two opposing worlds that most couldn't imagine living at the same time. On one hand, the dazzling lights of the Today Show, where millions tuned in each morning to see her glowing presence. On the other, the quiet and heartbreaking reality of a wife slowly watching the man she loved slip away.
Sheinelle's days were a blur of emotion and responsibility. She'd rise early to get her kids ready for school, then head straight to the studio, putting on a brave face between segments. In the background, she was fielding calls from doctors, coordinating treatments, managing medications. She was a mother full of love, a wife full of devotion, and a professional holding it all together. At the same time, just imagine the exhaustion. Some nights with barely any sleep. Some mornings swallowing back tears, because there simply wasn't time to fall apart. She carried a weight that went unseen, and she did it without asking for pity or attention. This wasn't only about grief. It was about love, about courage, about holding steady in the most difficult, unimaginable moments. And here's what's wild. Through it all, she never let the world see her fall. She chose grace over drama. She didn't turn her pain into posts or make mourning a performance. Instead, she lived it quietly, letting her silence speak volumes more than any words could. Even her coworkers began to notice. The Today Show team wasn't just a workplace anymore. They became a circle of support, full of admiration for the way she carried herself in the face of such pain. The hurt was deep, but so was the respect. And then came the day Sheinelle posted again, this time after the funeral. No photo, no long caption, just a simple, heartfelt thank you. It was her way of closing a chapter, without opening the floodgates of speculation or noise. Her power didn't come from the words she said. It came from the quiet dignity she chose to walk in. And this is when fate took an unexpected turn. Her story didn't go viral in the loud, dramatic way we're used to. It spread slowly, gently, across social media into people's hearts. Strangers began reflecting on their own lives. Some picked up the phone and called their partners. Others held their children a little longer that night. Old pictures of Sheinelle and Uche began to reappear, this time seen through the lens of love and loss. This wasn't some celebrity gossip or click-worthy headline. This was a love story, a woman who lost her person and kept walking forward through the storm with quiet grace. But here's the thing. This story, it wasn't really about death. It was about life, about choosing to love deeply and completely, even when the future is uncertain, about honoring someone beautifully, even in the middle of heartbreak. This is the kind of story that teaches more about love and the power of silence than shouting ever could. You won't believe how Sheinelle's journey unfolded after saying goodbye to the love of her life, Uche. Everyone anticipated heartbreak, tears, emotional outbursts, and very public displays of sorrow. But here's what took people by surprise. Sheinelle chose a different route, one paved with quiet strength, undeniable dignity, and an almost calm resilience that no one quite expected. Rather than putting her pain on full display, as many might have, she kept it close. She shared very little publicly, but through her grace and steady presence, she showed everything. And this is where it gets compelling. After her loss, Sheinelle didn't retreat from the world. Instead, she moved through her days one step at a time, continuing with the same warmth and professionalism that audiences had come to love. Yet behind it all, she was carrying a private storm of grief. No one could truly see it. There were no emotional social media posts, no calls for attention or pity, just a brief, sincere message thanking everyone for their love and support, then silence. And that silence? It said more than any speech ever could. So what makes this story stand out? It isn't the kind of tragedy that makes tabloid headlines. No scandal, no spectacle. It's the story of a real woman balancing two worlds, the dazzling lights of the TV studio and the quiet, crushing pain of losing her soulmate. Sheinelle's love for Uche wasn't loud or showy. It was strong, steady, and absolutely unshakable. She reminded the world that love doesn't need a spotlight to be powerful. Her story quickly echoed across social media, not because of drama, but because of its authenticity. People were touched by her bravery, how she managed to hold her family close, nurture her children, and continue her work while walking through unimaginable sorrow. Messages began to flood in from fans who said her strength encouraged them to reach out, to say I love you more often, to hold their families a bit closer. But the most remarkable part? Even during her darkest hours, Sheinelle somehow managed to keep hope alive. She didn't allow the pain to swallow her whole. Instead, she chose to keep Uche's memory alive through how she lived. Through love, through laughter, through quiet grace. She never let grief stop her from being a mother, a colleague, or a friend. She showed us all that grief doesn't only mark an ending, it also becomes a way of carrying love forward, even when it hurts. Fate took an unexpected turn when her story reached millions. What began as a deeply private sorrow evolved into a message for the world, a powerful reminder of resilience, of grace. Sheinelle became something more than just a TV host. She became a symbol of bravery in the face of overwhelming grief. Her journey reminded people that true strength often lies in simply showing up, day after day, even when everything inside you wants to quit. In a world where so many stories are filled with noise and spectacle, Sheinelle's was something else. It was about real life, messy, painful, but deeply full of meaning and love. She showed us that grief doesn't have to be loud or on display to be real. And sometimes, the most powerful way to honor someone's life is through quiet remembrance and choosing to live well. As the days turned to weeks, and the weeks into months, Sheinelle remained steady. She didn't have to announce her pain. You could feel it in her smile, in the quiet strength behind her eyes, in the way she continued to speak about Uche, not with sadness, but with love. She kept inspiring those who saw their own silent struggles mirrored in her strength. And in the end, the greatest lesson Sheinelle's journey offered was this: love doesn't end. It changes shape, but it never fades.
It lives on in memories, in the hearts of the children left behind, in the quiet spaces we still share with those we've lost. Her story wasn't only about loss, it was about showing the world that love is the light that leads us through even our darkest moments. So when you reflect on this story, don't just see the sorrow. See it for what it truly is: a celebration of the enduring power of love. A reminder that even in the face of heartbreak, we can choose grace instead of despair, hope instead of hopelessness, strength instead of surrender. Sheinelle's quiet courage gave us a new way to understand grief, not as something that destroys us, but as something that can deepen our ability to love, to remember, and to keep moving forward. Please take a moment to say a prayer for Sheinelle and her family as they continue through this difficult time. Your kind thoughts and prayers mean more than you know. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that remind us all of love's power and the strength found in resilience. Thank you for watching and for supporting.